Her mother called me Mr. Invisible. Her friends laughed out loud. And her? She sat on the bed, in my shirt, texting them, right in front of me. I didn't explode. I vanished. But first, I canceled everything. Now, they're stuck on stage with no music, no lights, and no groom. But that's not even the worst thing that happened to them. I always thought the worst thing a man could be at his own wedding was nervous. But the truth? The worst thing you can be is irrelevant. I figured that out one afternoon, sitting at the edge of our dining table, going over the final wedding expenses. My laptop was open, and the screen was cluttered with digital receipts that felt more like warnings than confirmations. $1,200 for flights to get her cousins there. Another chunk for the rooftop after-party spot. Everything was under my name, hotel blocks, custom party favors, the works. I never once griped about it. Not once did I ask Elena to pitch in. To me, love meant stepping up. If you had the means, you handled it. And I did. I run a logistics consulting firm that's treated me pretty well. I live smart, invest wisely, and mind my business. That, apparently, was my blind spot. Keeping quiet made them think I didn't matter. Elena strolled in wearing this loose ivory robe, her phone in one hand, laughing at something a friend had sent. She leaned in and kissed my cheek, soft, quick, like flipping a coin into a fountain, then wandered to the fridge. Even after all the tension lately, she could still glow like that. There were moments, fleeting now, when her presence filled the whole room. I remember the first time I saw her dance barefoot in the kitchen, humming Billie Holiday, spinning in a circle like a woman with no past to regret. That version of her had lit up something in me. She wasn't cruel then. She was magnetic. Oh, by the way, she said, like it was nothing. I added a few more names to the after-party list. Just a couple people from the past. I looked up, slow and cautious. What kind of people? She took a sip of her mango juice, as casual as ever. Don't be weird, she said. Just Logan and Derek. It's been ages. They're harmless. Logan, her ex-husband. Derek, her ex-boyfriend. The same one who showed up drunk to her birthday and started a fight at the door. You invited your ex-husband to our wedding celebration? I asked, setting the laptop aside. It's not a wedding party, she replied with a shrug. It's just a celebration. Casual vibes. The room seemed to freeze around me, but she didn't even blink. I stayed quiet at first, just looking at her. She wasn't kidding. No smirk. No sarcastic laugh. No playful little wink. Just Elena, spinning her straw in that drink like she hadn't just punched me in the gut. You think that's appropriate? I asked, finally breaking the silence. She let out a sigh, flicking her hand dismissively. Oh, come on, Jalen. Grow up. Logan's remarried. And Derek? He's just there for the drinks. Then she added, honestly, you're being really insecure right now. Insecure. That hit harder than it should have, not because it was true, but because it was lazy. The easiest way to twist a man's hurt back on him. Like I wasn't reacting to real disrespect, just making stuff up in my head. I stood there in shock. Before I could even reply, her mother strolled in. Vivian Ward, the queen of sugar-coated insults and smug little digs. She breezed in holding a Bloomingdale's bag and wearing that look that made you feel broke, no matter your income. You still whining about the guest list, she said, barely looking my way. Please. It's just a party. If you don't like it, we'll let Tyler have your spot. I blinked. Tyler? She smiled like she was tasting something sweet. Tyler. Grant. Elena's old flame from childhood. You remember him. So charming. He's flying in. I didn't move, but inside, something shifted. Not a clean break. Just the first crack in glass, small, but spreading. That's when it sank in. I wasn't the groom. I was just a filler. A stand-in for their little circus act. Elena giggled, actually giggled, and leaned into her mom. It's just jokes, babe. Relax. Relax. Another word like insecure. Empty, sharp-edged, and meant to shut you up. I didn't respond. Just gave a small nod. Right. Just jokes. That night, I stayed up in the guest room. She thought I needed space. What she didn't realize was I was rewriting everything. There's a limit to how many times a man can swallow his pride before something breaks, explodes, or disappears. I chose the second one. I played every memory back in my head. The way she used to admire my discipline but made fun of how I hated big crowds. How Vivian once asked if my job was just typing on a keyboard all day. How they laughed when I suggested a small, simple ceremony, then demanded a rooftop wedding with orchids flown in and champagne towers. And each time, I gave in. Quietly. I didn't want to cause waves. I just wanted peace. But giving peace to people who don't value you? That just teaches them to treat you like background noise. But even then, there was a moment, a flicker, a memory. I remembered her on our first road trip, just us and the open highway. She reached over mid-song, tangled her fingers in mine, and said, "I never feel like I have to pretend around you." I believed her. I still wonder if, for a while, it was true. I stared at the ceiling that night, trying to convince myself there was still something left under all the glitter and noise. For just a second, I considered forgiving it, blaming stress, hoping for change. But the memory cracked under the weight of reality. The next morning, Elena was humming as she got dressed. She slipped into a sleek white cocktail dress she planned to wear after the wedding. "What do you think, babe?" I stared at her reflection in the mirror. She looked stunning, no doubt. But beauty without heart? That's just a house without heat. Elegant, cold, and impossible to live in. "It's nice," I said, my voice flat. She didn't catch the tone, too busy texting. Her smile softened as her fingers danced on the screen. But when she noticed me watching, she quickly locked her phone. I didn't need to ask. The names were already there. Logan, probably Derek too. That was the moment the quiet planning started. No yelling, no scenes, no desperate pleas. Just a new tab on my phone. At the top, I typed, "The cost of being the joke." And beneath that, I didn't write emotions. Just numbers. Cold, clear, undeniable. If they saw me as a prop, I'd show them what it really costs to build a stage without one. The apartment was lively in the most isolating way. Laughter from a group call echoing down the hall, clinking glasses, filtered photo clicks. Inside the bedroom, a glowing screen, gold eyeshadow dusted across cheekbones, and background tracks of curated joy. I stood just outside the door, back pressed to the wall. I wasn't overhearing by accident. I was listening on purpose. Because pretending not to see the disrespect? That was going to drown me. And tonight, I wasn't in the mood to drown. The door wasn't even shut all the way. Elena was perched on the bed, legs crossed, face lit by the glow of her screen. She was on a video call with her three best friends, Maya, Zoe, and Lena, the same trio who had laughed at our engagement dinner when Vivian called me Martin, her accountant. They were drinking, gossiping, laughing like they had the place to themselves. Maya's voice broke through first. "Wait, Logan's coming? You didn't mention that part." Elena laughed. "Yep. And Derek too. Let them all see me shine." "Oh my God." Priya squealed. "This is going to be a circus." Then Zoe jumped in, cackling. "Jalen's going to be standing there like a substitute teacher while the real roster shows up." They laughed hard, but what came next knocked the air out of me. Elena grinned. "He'll be fine. He's used to being in the background. Jalen tends to keep to himself. Sometimes it feels like people overlook him." The laughter roared again. I didn't move. My hands curled at my sides, but I stayed still. No yelling, no outburst, no broken phones. Just breathing slow, steady, watching the shadows move under the door. Then I heard Vivian's voice cut in, and it hit me. I hadn't even noticed she was on the call. "Honestly, Jalen isn't bad," she said with a snort. "He doesn't stand out much. He blends into the background." More laughter followed. "I've been calling him Mr. Invisible all week," she went on. Elena and I laughed harder than we had in a long time. "That's so messed up," Zoe said through giggles. But also, kind of true. Elena didn't stop them. She didn't say a word to defend me. In fact, she laughed the loudest of all. And that's the moment I stopped being shocked. When the call finally ended, I stood up and made my way to the kitchen. Outwardly, I was calm. But inside, I was already gone. I sat at the table, opened my notebook again, and at the bottom of the page, I wrote something in small block letters. "They don't see me as a man. They see me as an accessory." A little later, she came out wearing one of my shirts like it was some quirky fashion statement. She had that glow on her face, the same one she always had after a good gossip session. It reminded me of the way she used to look when she stayed up late telling me secrets she swore she'd never told anyone, stories from childhood, her fear of becoming her mother, the dream she had before the world shaped her differently. That Elena had warmth in her. Not just magnetism, but the kind of vulnerability that made you lean in. Now, the glow had become something else. A sheen. A performance. A polished Instagram filter. I was sitting on the couch, pretending to read emails from clients. But my head was somewhere far, far away. She dropped down beside me and nudged my knee with hers. "You're awfully quiet," she said playfully. "I've got a lot running through my head," I replied, eyes still on the screen. She leaned in and kissed my cheek. like a mom trying to calm a kid after scolding him. "You're overthinking again," she whispered. "Everything's going to be perfect." Perfect. There it was again, that word. To her, perfect meant it looked right on Instagram. It meant the surface was polished, even if everything underneath was cracked. I watched her walk away, humming, phone already back in her hand. Probably texting Logan. Maybe Derek. Maybe both. That night, I went into the guest room and pulled out a folder I hadn't touched in months. It held legal paperwork, my original prenuptial agreement draft. She had laughed at it, brushed it off, convinced me it was unnecessary. "Do you really not trust me?" she asked that night, her voice trembling. Back then, that look in her eyes, wounded, real, had made me put the folder away. I told myself love meant not needing backup plans. But now I saw it. The tension had always been there. It was just dressed up in roses and monogram napkins. So I began documenting. Everything. Every receipt. Every name added to the guest list. Every small comment that chipped away at me. I started screen recording the wedding charges from my banking app. I snapped pictures of the RSVP chart she left open on her computer with Logan's name. And Amara's. I emailed it all to myself. Subject line, just in case. See, I wasn't the kind of man to shout or storm out. I wasn't the type to vent on Facebook or break dishes in a fit. But I watched. I remembered. And I prepared. The next day, Vivian showed up without warning. She brought centerpiece swatches and a bottle of wine she likely expected me to pay for. I answered the door with a blank face. "Oh, good," she said, brushing past me. "You're home. I need to talk about the shuttle for Tyler. His flight lands late." I frowned. "Tyler?" "Yes, sweetheart. Tyler Grant. You remember him? Elena's old childhood sweetheart." "I remember," I said flatly. "Well, I'm flying him in," she added, like she was doing us all a favor. "She deserves to have people who really know her there." "She has me," I replied without emotion. She blinked at that. "Of course, darling. But you know, someone's got to keep things together when the groom gets cold feet." She winked like it was a joke. We both knew it wasn't. She didn't respect me. Didn't even like me, really. To her, I was just a checkbook with a smile. Once the payment cleared, I'd be edited out like a draft paragraph. That night, I sat down at my laptop and started looking at flights. I typed in Santorini, our original honeymoon spot. The book now button stared back at me. But I didn't click it. Not yet. I needed one last sign. One final confirmation. And I got it the next morning. Elena asked me to help zip up her new dress. It was sleek and modern, white with a clean cut. She looked amazing in it. But as I stood behind her, hands on the zipper, I caught a glimpse of her phone screen in the mirror. There was a message. "Derek, you sure he won't snap? Elena, please." Jalen doesn't even notice. He's too busy being supportive. She smiled at me sweetly as I zipped her dress the rest of the way. I didn't say a word. She thought I hadn't seen. She thought she still had control. And for a moment, just a breath, I almost told myself it was a misunderstanding. That maybe Derek was reading too much into things. That maybe Elena didn't mean it like that. But the way she smiled, effortlessly, without guilt, closed the door. What she didn't know was that the man she considered invisible was about to become the one thing they'd all have to face. Later, I sat in my usual seat at the kitchen table. But something inside me had changed. It wasn't rage. It wasn't heartbreak. It was colder than that. Sharper. It was clarity. I flipped past the old wedding budget pages in my notebook and started a fresh one. At the top, I wrote the list. Not just costs. Not just notes. Proof. Timeline. Pattern. Plan. I started at the top. Venue deposit. $11,750. That went out in early February. I remember clearly. Elena said she needed the rooftop with the harbor view. "It has to be unforgettable," she told me. Funny. I'd end up being the one trying to forget. Catering, $9,300. All vegan, gluten-free, organic fusion food. Stuff we never eat. But Vivian wanted to impress her clients. "This wedding is also networking," she said. I nodded and wrote the check. And died a little inside while they argued over items that sounded like they belonged in a science lab. Hotel block, $5,250. I covered rooms for a bunch of her extended family. People she hadn't spoken to in years. Found out later one of them reconnected her with Derek. Just my luck. Flights for her Arizona cousins, $2,550. Bridesmaid dresses she promised to pay for, charged to my card, $3,600. Flower deposit, $3,400. DJ, $3,000. Custom party favors, champagne flutes engraved with Elena and Jalen. Forever, $1,150. Forever. That word stung now. I kept writing, page after page. When I finally added everything up, the total hit just over $46,000. Not even counting the ring. Every dollar came from my account. Every last one. She hadn't offered to help. Not once. And when I looked at that final number, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pride. I felt stupid. Not because of the money, but because it was so easy for them to expect me to pay. Like that was all I was good for. Just a man in a suit with a wallet. About an hour later, Elena drifted into the living room holding up another dress. This one was emerald green, with a high slit that made her look like she'd stepped out of a movie. She twirled around slowly, her hair pinned up in that dramatic way she liked. "Babe, what do you think?" she asked, striking a pose. I looked up. "What's it for?" "For the after party," she said, flashing a grin. "I want to look unforgettable, especially with Logan and Derek coming." Then she laughed. "Isn't it kind of funny? Every man I've ever been with, all in one room." Funny. There it was again, that damn word. I wanted to turn to her and ask if she really believed I was that blind. If she honestly thought a man would just sit there and smile while she paraded her old flings around like backup dancers in some reality show reunion. But I didn't say a thing. Just nodded once. She took that nod as approval, as permission, then leaned into the mirror and went right back to texting. I didn't need to peek over her shoulder. I already knew who was lighting up her screen. Logan, the ex-husband she claimed still respected her. Derek, the old boyfriend who used to blow up her phone at 2 a.m. back when we first started dating. And Tyler, the fantasy boy her mom resurrected like some shiny prize from a dusty shelf. I watched her for a moment, just standing there, caught up in her own glow like she was admiring a painting. But I didn't see the woman I fell in love with anymore. There was a time she would have turned around, seen me hurting, and actually cared. I remembered her once kneeling on the floor next to me when my father passed, hand on my chest, I searching mine. "Say what you need to say," she whispered. "I can take it." Back then, she made me believe partnership meant softness too. But now? Now I saw an actress, getting ready to play a role I never signed up for. Her face? Still beautiful. But the expression was rehearsed, her smile staged, her whole vibe curated like an influencer post. It lacked the stuff that mattered: respect, honesty, real care. I turned and walked out without a word. Went into the guest room, opened my laptop, and got to work. I copied every single receipt, saved every screenshot, messages, call logs, credit charges. Then I backed it all up on the external drive I kept tucked away in my sock drawer. After that, I pulled up a blank spreadsheet and started sorting through the mess. Every line became a piece of the puzzle. Line 12, catering deposit, paid via card ending in 37X for $1,000. My card. Line 22, bridesmaids dresses, MX319, $3,200. Also mine. Line 35, Amara's second gown, 2 dresses, $1,600. Yep, still my card. And under all of it, I wrote, "No financial contribution from partner. No signed prenup. No financial transparency." Later that evening, she asked if I'd go with her to the final walkthrough at the venue. She wore that same green dress. I told her I had work to finish. She pouted for half a second, then shrugged it off. And that right there told me everything. She didn't really want me there. She just wanted the illusion. My role was simple: stand close enough to fund the show, but far enough not to interrupt the performance. I took another step. I emailed every vendor, the venue manager, caterer, hotel rep, DJ, and florist, and requested copies of our signed contracts. I asked for confirmation that the agreements were all in my name. The responses rolled in fast. Every single one. Every contract had just my name. I stared at those emails like they were demolition plans. Because now I saw it clearly how this would all end. It wouldn't be loud. It wouldn't be messy. It would be quiet, precise, and final. That night, I sat at the table with my notebook open. Elena came back from the walkthrough glowing like a girl fresh off a photo shoot. She kicked off her shoes and slid into bed, totally unbothered. "You're gonna love the lighting," she said dreamily. "It's like something out of a movie." I nodded. "Sounds magical." She rolled onto her side, still texting in the dark. Probably Logan. Maybe Derek. Could have been both. But I wasn't watching her anymore. I was watching the ceiling. writing the next move in my head. There was a beat. A moment where I stared at the shadow of her in bed and thought, could I forgive this? Not because she earned it, but because I missed who she used to be. Because part of me still wished she'd turn, look at me like she used to, and say, I'm scared too. But she didn't. The moment passed, and what replaced it wasn't rage or heartbreak. It was colder than that. Sharper. It was clarity. I sat in the dim light, face lit by the soft glow of my laptop screen. The clock behind me ticked on. 12:43 a.m. Outside, the city buzzed faintly, but our apartment was still, eerily still. That calm right before something snaps. This wasn't just another sleepless night. This was the night I crossed the line I couldn't step back from. The straw had landed. The camel's back was broken. The list was done. The proof saved. My gut wasn't whispering anymore. It was yelling, and I wasn't about to keep pretending I didn't hear it. I opened our shared banking account, the one we used for groceries, dinners, random errands. The wedding stuff? That had all gone through my personal cards. That was deliberate. I had drawn a boundary, but now I needed to reinforce it before they drained more than just my wallet. I clicked Manage Access, scrolled down, and removed both users. Elena. And yes, Vivian. She'd somehow convinced Elena to give her access 6 months ago just in case. I should have cut that cord the day it happened. But I didn't. I wanted to be the good guy, the future husband who compromised. Now I realized, being good to the wrong people just gives them a better grip to use you. So I locked the account, set alerts for all activity, changed the password. Then I opened another folder. Inside was a draft I hadn't touched in over a year. A separation agreement. We'd fought back then, our first real blowout. Money, trust, boundaries. I consulted a lawyer, had him draw it up, just in case. Then I shelved it. Thought we moved past it. Turns out, we didn't. I clicked compose in my email and typed in the name, Reese Morgan. My lawyer. My friend. Subject, activate. Message, Reese. I'm done pretending. I've attached everything you need. Please proceed with the emergency filing. I'll be off the grid for a bit. I'll sign anything you need before I leave. You know where to send it. Then I attached it all. The messages, the receipts, the laughing group chat, Derek's text asking if I'd flip out, the unauthorized dress charge. I hit send. Next, I opened a travel site. Typed in one word, Santorini. Our honeymoon destination that never would be. We were supposed to sail on a catamaran, eat seafood by the water, wake up with sunlight pouring into a white stone villa overlooking the ocean. But that dream had been smothered under smug laughs and condescending sighs. I chose a one-way flight for the morning after the after-party, picked a window seat, paid in full, downloaded the confirmation. Then, I faced the final task, the wedding itself. I opened the vendor contracts one by one and started canceling. First, the venue. Left a voicemail after hours. Followed it with an email. Effective immediately, I'm canceling the event scheduled under my name. Please confirm cancellation and initiate refund per contract terms. Then the DJ. Gone. Hotel block. Cancelled. Florist. I asked them to donate the arrangements to a nearby retirement home. Even the private airport shuttle Vivian insisted on for her VIP guests. I shut it down. She texted me around 10 p.m., saying she might be home late. I replied, take your time. I'm just handling a few things here. She sent back a red heart emoji. That was it. I leaned back in my chair and stared at that tiny, glowing heart. Funny how something so small could be the last straw. That little red heart on my screen? It looked meaningless now. Just a fake gesture slapped over months of deception. A pixelated bandage on a broken bone. I walked into the kitchen and poured a glass of water. As I stood there, I let my eyes drift around the apartment. The photos in neat frames. The wine rack she insisted we needed. The matching towels we picked out together 6 months ago. It all felt like props on a stage. Like I had been living inside someone else's picture-perfect fantasy. But I was finished playing my part. There's something you figure out when you spend enough time being the calm one. People confuse your quiet for weakness. They think if you're not loud, you're not paying attention. What they never realize, until it's too late, is that silence is often strategy. I didn't lash out when Elena mocked me behind my back. I didn't argue when Vivian joked about replacing me like a pair of shoes. I didn't even flinch when they used my loyalty as a punchline. But that was over. Now they'd learn what it really means when a quiet man walks away. I pulled out my suitcase and packed without emotion. This wasn't for a weekend getaway. This was a clean break. 2 button-ups, 2 pairs of pants, my passport, laptop charger, important paperwork, noise-canceling headphones, and sunglasses. Everything else? I left it behind because I wasn't planning to return. Elena came home sometime after 1 a.m. I was already under the covers, pretending to be asleep. She leaned over, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "Big day tomorrow, babe." Then climbed in next to me like we were still in love. And maybe, if I'm being honest, part of me still wished we were. Just for a breath. I remembered our first weekend together, rain outside, her head on my chest, and her saying, "I feel safe with you." That line had lived in me for years. But that warmth had been gone a long time. Now it was just muscle memory. She had no idea that the hotel rooms were already canceled. No idea the caterers had pulled out. No music. No drinks. No lights. Just an empty rooftop and a vanishing act she didn't see coming. I lay still, listening to her breathing slow into sleep. And I thought about what would happen tomorrow. The missed calls, the rising confusion, the silence where applause should have been. Then I imagined myself on a plane to Santorini. Earbuds in, glass of wine in hand. No ring, no baggage. And I smiled. Because people like her and her mother, they only start valuing what they lost when it's too late to get it back. The morning of the after-party felt like the final scene of a play I never agreed to be in. I got up early, before the sky changed color. She was still asleep, face turned away, phone still clutched in her hand. Even in her dreams, she couldn't let go. I stood up slowly, looked at her one last time. No goodbyes. No notes. No explanations. She didn't deserve any. My bag was ready. Flight was a few hours away. The airport wasn't far. And I had plenty of time to vanish. I took one last walk through the apartment, didn't touch a single thing. Everything I wanted, I'd already taken with me. By 9 a.m., I was in the car I'd scheduled last night. Down the elevator, out the door. I sat back and watched the city roll past my window like the final credits of a film I never wanted to see again. No fear. No regret. Just stillness. At the airport, I passed through check-in, security, and found a quiet seat in the lounge. Ordered red wine. Opened my laptop. Checked my inbox. And just like clockwork, the updates came in. Venue canceled. Confirmed. Hotel block. Released. DJ. Politely stood down. Everything falling apart perfectly. And Elena? Still clueless. Then came the first bus. 10:15 a.m., Elena. "Hey babe, where'd you go? Cold feet? LOL. Text me." I didn't. 10:32 a.m., Elena. "You're not answering. Are you okay? You left without your wallet." 10:45 a.m., Vivian. "We're at the venue, and it's locked. Where is everyone?" I took another sip and waited. 10:51 a.m., Zoe, bridesmaid. "The hotel says everything's canceled. What's happening?" 11:16 a.m., Elena. "Jalen, this isn't funny. My hair is done. I'm in makeup. Everyone's panicking. Call me." Phone rang. I ignored it. Then again. And again. 12:09 p.m. Vivian. "You immature coward. You ruined Elena's day. Is this your idea of a joke?" I smiled into my wine glass. 12:34 p.m. Tessa. "I just got here. It's chaos. Logan already dipped. Derek's sitting outside looking clueless. Vivian's going ballistic. Somebody's crying in the bathroom. I swear, this is better than any show on TV." I chuckled under my breath. Soft and full. Like closure. Tessa again. "Also, fun fact. Your seat was labeled with Tyler's name. I guess they had a stand-in groom waiting. Poor guy looked like he stepped into a trap. I could picture it clearly, eh? Vivian barking at the staff. Elena panicking in heels too tall for her ego. Tyler, the backup plan, standing there like he just got sucker punched. No DJ. No food. No lights. All of it paid for by me. And now, taken back by me. 1:12 p.m. Elena. "Why are guests getting refunded?" Jalen, what did you do? 1:34 p.m. Elena. "People are leaving. You canceled the hotel block? My cousin's flight? Are you serious right now?" 1:41 p.m. Vivian. "Spineless. I knew you couldn't handle a real woman like Elena. You'll regret this. Trust me." I turned off my phone. Let the buzzing die. They weren't angry that I left. They were upset that I walked away before they got what they expected. I opened Tessa's messages again. Me. "Thanks for keeping me posted. Tessa." "Of course. I told Elena not to treat you like an ATM. She thought she could disrespect you forever. Me. She forgot who had control the whole time. Tessa. Want to hear the best part? She said in the group chat, this party is going to be legendary. All the men who ever loved me will see me shine. I screenshotted it. She sent it. I saved it. Reese would use that perfectly. Every message they sent, more proof in my corner. By 2:10 p.m., I was boarding. Seat 1A. First class. I sat back, closed my eyes, and smiled as the engine hummed beneath my feet. The man they tried to erase had just rewritten the ending. The world outside that plane could have crumbled, and I wouldn't have blinked. I didn't know anyone anymore. Not the people who ignored me, not the ones who only remembered me when they needed something. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't drained. I wasn't stuffing my feelings into a box. I wasn't clinging to the hope of being chosen. Somewhere high above the Atlantic, I had chosen myself. I reached into my bag, pulled out my journal, and scribbled down a thought. They rehearsed a spectacle. I closed the curtains. Now they're stuck on stage, no lights, no crowd, no script. And I smiled. Because this wasn't about revenge. It was about release. Somewhere in that stillness between continents, I drifted off. No dreams. No tossing. No tension. Just sleep. The kind that wraps around you like a blanket of silence. When I opened my eyes again, a flight attendant gently tapped my shoulder, asking if I wanted breakfast. I shook my head. I wasn't hungry. At least not for food. I was craving space. Stillness. A kind of freedom where the air wasn't crowded with someone else's ego. As we dipped through the golden light over the Aegean, my phone lit up again. 37 missed calls from Elena. A dozen more from Vivian. And a few from unknown numbers, probably Maya, maybe Priya, or Tyler. Probably wondering how he flew across the country just to play stand-in for a missing groom. I ignored them all. But then a familiar name popped up. Tessa. Her message buzzed through just before we touched down. It's a disaster. Vivian's throwing blame in every direction. Logan bailed. Derek posted something cryptic about fake people. Tyler? Took a cab straight back to the airport. No one's saying your name. It's like they're pretending you never existed. I stared at her words longer than I expected to. There was something oddly poetic about it. After all the backhanded comments, all the jokes about me being invisible. Now they were treating me like I was never there at all. But that silence? It didn't protect them. It exposed them. I landed in Santorini at 3:07 p.m. The warmth hit me like a memory I didn't know I missed. The sea shimmered like it was ready to tell me something. And this time, I was ready to listen. A driver stood waiting, holding a small placard with my name. Mr. Brooks, he said with a warm smile. Welcome. I hadn't heard my own name spoken with kindness in weeks. The hotel sat high on a cliff, all sun-bleached walls and billowing white canvas. From my suite, I could see the caldera, still and ancient. The sea slept in the mouth of a volcano, and it looked peaceful. I stepped onto the balcony, let out a long breath, and finally felt the weight slide off my chest. While I unpacked, the phone buzzed again. Elena. Please. Talk to me. Another one. Elena. Forget the party. I just want to know why you did this to me. I didn't answer. She wasn't sorry for how she treated me. She was sorry for how it ended. Then an email from Vivian hit my inbox. Subject line. You owe us an explanation. I didn't even open it. I forwarded it straight to Reese, my lawyer. A few minutes later, he called. Voice calm, amused under the surface. Got the email, he said. And those group chat screenshots? Derek's messages? Solid gold. We're not just talking separation now. This is bigger. Good, I said. We'll file a full divorce petition by Monday, he continued. They've got nothing. Contracts are all in your name. They can throw tantrums, but legally, they're out of moves. What about the ring? I asked. Reese chuckled. Rented. You kept the receipt. Covered. You're 3 steps ahead, Jalen. I smiled faintly. Learned from you. He paused. You okay? I will be, I said. But I'm not going back as the man who left. We hung up. I turned off the phone, placed it in the bedside drawer and closed it. No more buzzing. No more noise. Just sea wind and silence. The next few days, I relearned who I was. I woke up when I wanted. I walked the narrow streets with no destination, no one asking where I was going. I hiked alone, sat on rocks that overlooked the endless blue, ate grilled fish and lemon olives without needing to share my plate, drank local wine, watched the sunset and didn't feel like recording it. I wrote again, not about what they did to me, but about what I was building now. Peace. That's what happens when you finally prioritize yourself. You stop craving revenge. You stop needing apologies. You stop performing for people who only saw you when they needed something. By the fourth day, Tessa messaged again. They're still spiraling. Elena posted a sob story about you ghosting her. But the screenshots leaked. Maya's cousin uploaded the group chat. Everyone's seeing the truth. I didn't ask her to keep updating me. She just did. She had witnessed what I lived through. The slow, quiet dismantling of my dignity. Now she was the echo, proof that I hadn't vanished. I had stepped out. The next morning, I returned to the balcony, cappuccino in hand, sunlight cresting over the edge of the cliffs. I opened my journal again and wrote one line. I was never the problem. I was the reset button they never saw coming. And then nothing. No more calls. No more begging. Just silence. But not peace. Not for them. Elena didn't know how to exist without the spotlight. And Vivian? She only knew how to operate when she controlled someone else's script. But without me, there was no show, no lights, no audience. Just her voice, shouting into an empty room. At the end of that week, I booked another flight. Not back home. To Lisbon. I needed a new beginning. Somewhere fresh. Where nobody expected anything from me. Santorini had been the escape. Lisbon would be the reset. As I packed, I realized something that stunned me with its calm. I didn't feel guilty. Not even a little. Because I hadn't run away from something. I had stepped out of a fire I didn't ignite, but had every right to extinguish. Exactly 2 weeks after landing in Portugal, the legal drama officially began. Reese moved like a surgeon. Precise. Calculated. Unshakable. Every file I sent. Every screenshot, transaction, message. All arranged into a case that couldn't be broken. And this time, it wasn't about proving anything to them. It was about protecting the version of me that finally chose to walk away. He didn't just file for divorce. Reese went further. He submitted a formal declaration citing emotional fraud, backed by proof of financial exploitation. This wasn't revenge. It was the truth, made official, undeniable, and on record. It wasn't about punishing Elena. It was about removing any room for revision, any space for Vivian's polished smile to spin another story. When the paperwork landed, it hit them like a lightning strike. Reese's email arrived with the subject line. It's done. His message was short. Filed and served. No prenup to protect her. Every expense, booking, and contract is in your name alone. She has no legal stake. The only card they've got left is spin, and it's not admissible. Oh, and Vivian's threatening to sue for event damages. Claims your last-minute cancellations ruined her image. I responded by forwarding her all the vendor contracts, each one bearing only your signature. No co-signers. No liability. Also the ring. Returned and documented. You're clean, Jalen. Let them scream. The receipts speak louder. I read the email in a quiet cafe just off the market square. Espresso cooling between my fingers. I didn't smile. Didn't laugh. Just closed the laptop and breathed. I had done what most don't. I prepared. And when the curtain fell, I didn't flinch. I stepped off the stage I built. 2 days later, Tessa called. I rarely answered calls anymore. But for her, I always made time. The second I picked up, she didn't even say hello. You're trending. I blinked. What? Your story, she said. It's viral. The full thing. Screenshots, group chats, the guest list. That line from Elena? All the men who ever loved me will watch me shine. It's everywhere. How? Maya's cousin. Apparently Vivian tried throwing him under the bus online. So he snapped and posted everything. I leaned back, phone loose in my hand. And now, they're falling apart. Elena tried damage control, posted a tearful live claiming you abandoned her, but someone dropped a voice memo of Vivian laughing about replacing you with Tyler. It's turning into a feeding frenzy. I stared at the ceiling of my Lisbon apartment as Tessa described the chaos. They're tearing each other to shreds now, she said. It's poetic. That's when it really hit me. I didn't have to lift a finger. They had weaponized gossip, secrets, and pride against me. But now those same weapons were devouring them. I had simply stepped out of the spotlight. And without me holding it up, their set collapsed. Meanwhile, Reese had secured everything stateside. My business accounts? Protected from day one. No shared property. No marital assets. Even the apartment we lived in, leased in my name only. They had no claim. No case. Nothing left to take. In a last-ditch effort, Vivian reached out to vendors, begging them to issue public statements to make me look unstable. But no one bit. The venue manager already had an NDA. The florist actually posted a public message. Some of y'all need to stop mistaking kindness for weakness. Our client was respectful and clear. That's all I'll say. And that went viral. Then came a message from a local media outlet. Subject: seeking comment on the vanishing groom. I didn't respond. I had no interest in feeding the drama. The only story that mattered was the one I was writing now. Reese sent one final update that week. Elena signed the no-contest divorce. Her lawyer likely pushed her to avoid more public exposure. Final docs incoming for your signature. And then, by the way, Ward Image Consulting lost 5 corporate clients. One of them saw the leaked messages. Looks like they're re-evaluating brand alignment. Figured you'd want to know. I sat with that email for a long moment. Not out of joy, not out of spite, but because it revealed something deeper. Their empire had always been brittle, propped up by illusion. One gust of truth, and it all fell. No yelling, no vengeance, just facts. And the truth is always louder than any stunt. I signed the divorce papers inside a Lisbon bookstore cafe. Didn't hesitate. Didn't even reread them. Click. Signature complete. I closed the laptop, sipped my espresso, and watched the old yellow trams roll past on cobblestone. The air smelled like salt and citrus. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't angry. I was free. A few days later, I got a text from Eli, an old mutual friend. She's trying to get people to vouch for her character. Nobody's biting. There's too much out there. I responded simply. Let her try. I'm not watching. And that's the truth. They expected me to stay tethered to the wreckage. Obsessing. Lurking. Waiting. But I wasn't. Because I didn't need closure from people who never opened up in the first place. I had found something far better. Peace. And I guarded it like gold. In Lisbon, I kept my rhythm. Worked remotely. Took on consulting gigs. Wandered through Alfama. Ate warm pastries with no plans. And for once, I didn't feel like I owed anyone an explanation for choosing myself. One night, I found myself on a rooftop watching the sky blush pink as the sun set. There was music drifting up from a street corner below. No wine. No camera. No company. Just me. And that was finally enough. That's the quiet power of walking away with grace. No explosion. No cruelty. Just clarity. You don't just leave the people who broke you. You leave the version of yourself that let them. Eventually, I knew Elena would try to reclaim the narrative. Sure enough, it started with a black and white photo, her in a wedding gown, by a window, looking mournful. Comments? Disabled. For 2 days, she soaked in sympathy from the few who hadn't seen the truth. Then Vivian followed. She reposted it on her business page with the caption, "Some relationships struggle when both people have strong personalities. My daughter deserved more." Once, that would have hit a nerve. Now, I just exhaled. Because the internet remembers. On day 3, the floodgates opened. Tessa messaged me, breathless. Someone, probably Priya's ex, leaked the full screenshot album. It hit a viral gossip site. The group chat where they joked about Tyler replacing me. The texts between Elena and Derek. And worst of all, the audio clip of Vivian saying, almost anyone else might have been a better fit for her expectations. At least a scarecrow wouldn't have asked questions. They didn't tag me in any of it. I didn't reply, didn't repost. But I saw it all. And I saw the shift. That slow turn from sympathy to suspicion. Then, full-on outrage. Viewers started reacting to her post, questioning her version of the story. Oh yeah, poor Elena. Total victim. Some folks went deeper. One user tracked down the florist's post praising how professional I had been throughout the planning. Another guest from the canceled afterparty posted a now-viral thread. They described the mess in vivid detail. How Elena kept grinning like she was at a pageant, even as the staff never showed and champagne never poured. By the week's end, the public tide had fully turned. She tried deleting the original wedding post. Didn't matter. Screenshots were immortal now, and I wasn't watching out of bitterness. I was watching because, after so long being invisible, it felt like a quiet kind of justice to see the truth finally take center stage. Then Tessa messaged, "Tessa, you won't believe this. Vivian's firm just lost its top client. Me. Because of the wedding fallout?" Tessa, "Yep." Someone sent the leaked screenshots to the CEO. They pulled the contract and issued a statement about corporate integrity. Vivian spiraling. Tried cleaning it up on LinkedIn. Total disaster. I didn't respond right away. Didn't have to. This wasn't revenge. It was just reality echoing back louder than any lie they'd crafted. A few days later, the bridal brand that had once featured Elena in their Bride Spotlight series quietly removed her story. No announcement. No drama. Just erased. Even Tyler, Mr. Childhood Crush turned backup groom, posted a vague but telling status. Some people chase attention so much, they lose sight of what really matters. I bookmarked it, not to share, but to remind myself that even the closest ones could finally see what I had seen all along. Back in Lisbon, I was already on to something new. I stopped checking notifications, stopped refreshing threads, started hiking more, journaling less. I met new people. Nora was a photographer from Porto, curious, kind, and refreshingly calm. She didn't dig into my past, didn't ask the wrong questions. She just offered conversation and space. We had coffee, then dinner, then a long, slow walk along the water that stretched until midnight. She wasn't anything like Elena. She wasn't anything like anyone, really. And that was exactly what I needed. She didn't compete, didn't diminish me. She just saw me. One night, on a rooftop with glasses of Vinho Verde in hand, she asked why I came to Lisbon. I thought about softening the truth, smoothing the edges. Instead, I told her. I was part of something that looked beautiful on the outside, but was falling apart underneath. I left before it took me down with it. She nodded slowly. You're not the first man to escape something like that, she said. But you're one of the few who didn't wait until it was too late. There was a stillness in her words, one that landed somewhere deep in my chest. Not love, but something honest. That night, lying in bed, I opened the wedding email folder I hadn't touched in weeks. I scanned through Elena's Pinterest perfect mood boards, mock-ups, invitation drafts, guest lists, and I deleted them, one by one, not out of anger, but as a form of closure. The final file? The RSVP spreadsheet. Tyler Grant's name set there under the VIP column, gold starred. I deleted that one last, then opened my journal and wrote. They built their identities around my silence. But the second I moved with action instead of words, the illusion cracked. Now they're trapped in the world they scripted for me. I didn't ruin their story. I just stopped playing the background character in it. The next morning, Tessa texted again. Tessa, she sent out a mass apology email. No names, just vague remorse. Looks like she's finally starting to accept the fallout. Me, let her. That's her path now. Tessa, you really aren't going to respond? Not even once? Me, no. I already did, when I walked away. That was the last time we discussed it. There wasn't anything left to say. Elena's show didn't fall apart because I tore it down. It collapsed because I stopped standing on the stage that was built to humiliate me. And once the spotlight vanished, there was nothing left for them to perform in. The first time I saw the sunrise over the Tigris River, I didn't think about what I'd escaped. I thought about what I'd finally created space for. Lisbon hadn't been part of the plan. In fact, there was no plan after Santorini. Just a quiet moment where I looked out over terracotta rooftops and decided I would never go back to being a man who accepted being treated like a placeholder. I wanted a place where nobody knew my name, where no one mistook my silence for weakness, where my story wasn't filtered through someone else's lens. So I rented a little apartment near Barro Alto. 2 rooms, 1 sun-drenched balcony, and just enough room for solitude. I set up my workspace near the window. Clients didn't care where I was as long as the job got done. And in that simple freedom, I found something I'd never had back home. The permission to exist entirely on my own terms. My days became rhythm. Mornings jogging by the water. Afternoons sipping espresso in quiet cafes. Evenings wandering old neighborhoods where ceramic tiles told stories older than any Whitmore legacy or curated social feed. It was simple, and it was mine. I didn't track the gossip anymore. Didn't follow the unraveling. Tessa still messaged here and there, but one day she wrote, "You've outgrown this, Jalen. Let it rot where it fell." She was right. I wasn't curious anymore. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't vindicated. I was just done. A month after I made Lisbon home, Nora invited me to her gallery show. She was soft-spoken but sincere. The kind of person who looks you in the eyes when she speaks. She didn't know much about my past, only that I lived through something that made me rebuild from the ground up. That night, the gallery buzzed with gentle chatter and the clinking of wine glasses. Her photographs hung on the walls. Scenes from Lisbon, moments in motion, musicians under golden light, children dancing through puddles. She stopped in front of one and pointed. A man walking down a narrow street, part of him in sunlight, the rest in shadow. "This one reminds me of you," she said. "Why?" "Because he's walking alone," she answered. "But he's not lost. He's choosing it." And for a long moment, I just looked at that photo. She had no idea what her words meant to me, but they landed with more weight than any apology Elena could have written. 2 mornings later, I signed the final divorce paperwork over breakfast. Reese had emailed me the last set of documents. I printed them at a corner shop down the street, signed my name with a steady hand, and mailed them back without a flicker of emotion. It wasn't a dramatic moment, just punctuation. The closing sentence of a chapter I'd already walked out of. No tears, no whiskey, no calls. Instead, I wandered up to a quiet viewpoint overlooking the river and watched the boats drift beneath me. I opened the same journal I'd been writing in since this all began and wrote. I didn't run from pain. I just stopped inviting it to dinner. That afternoon, a small box arrived in the mail. No return address. Inside was a Polaroid of me and Elena 2 years ago, Napa. We looked happy. She was laughing with her head tossed back. I had my arm around her waist. Tucked underneath the photo was a note. "He used to make me laugh without even trying." I forgot how rare that was. No signature. But I didn't need one. I knew it was her. I closed the box gently and set it aside, not with nostalgia, but with clarity. That moment in time didn't belong to me anymore. It had faded like a photograph left out in the sun. You can still see it, but the warmth is gone. That night, Nora and I sat on my balcony, a bottle of wine between us. She told me stories about Porto, about her father, about learning photography with an old film camera that never quite focused right. "Do you think you'll ever go back?" she asked, her voice low. "Back where?" "To where all of this began." I thought about it. The apartment I left behind, the after-party I never showed up for, the people who only noticed my absence when there was no one left to mock. "No," I said simply. "Everything I needed to understand, I learned by walking away. Even the hard parts. Especially those." And that was the truth. Lisbon didn't magically fix me, but it gave me space. Space to be myself without feeling like I had to shrink to fit. Eventually, I began letting new people into my life again. Not quickly, not recklessly, but with intention. People who didn't treat me like a tool or a placeholder. People who saw me, not just what I could give them. Friends, partners, clients who asked about my past, and instead of feeding them pain, I told them the truth. Sometimes, walking away is the most courageous thing you'll ever do. I started mentoring at a local nonprofit that helped young business owners get off the ground. One of the students asked me, "Why Lisbon? You could be making 10 times more in New York." I smiled. "Because here, I'm not a product. I'm a person." That answer stayed with me. It was the first time I'd said it aloud and truly believed it. A few weeks later, Nora brought me a gift, a leather-bound notebook. "For your next chapter," she said, smiling. I flipped it open, found the first page, and wrote. "This story no longer begins with betrayal. It begins with choosing myself." Then came the rain. Lisbon slowed under gray skies. I was tucked into my favorite cafe, the one under the ivy-covered buildings, with a mug of tea in my hands and the sound of trams in the distance. The world had quieted in that beautiful Lisbon way. Raindrops on the glass, pastries in the oven. Nowhere to be but here. My phone buzzed. A message from Reese. Subject, FWD, final letter, Elena Ward. I hesitated. I hadn't thought about her in weeks, not in the way I used to. The pain had passed. So had the anger. What remained was a calm distance, like remembering a movie you once loved, until you realized how poorly it ended. Still, I tapped it open. It was a scan of a handwritten letter. Lined notebook paper. Blue ink. No perfume. No flair. Just raw words in a familiar voice. "Jalen, I don't know where you are now. Maybe you blocked me. Maybe you'll never read this. And that's okay. I'm not writing to ask for anything. I'm writing because I finally saw what I refused to see while it mattered. You were good to me. You loved me in quiet, steady ways I never valued. I thought love had to be dramatic, messy, loud. You weren't any of that. You were safe, constant. And I mistook it for weakness. I let my mother talk down to you. I let my friends mock you. And I laughed when I should have defended you. I wanted to stand out so badly, I didn't notice the damage along the way. When you walked away, I realized the scariest thing. Without you, I had no story. I was just noise. This isn't a trap. It's not a plea. It's a confession. You were right. I didn't respect you. And I lost you because of it. I hope wherever you are, you feel free. I hope someone sees you as the story, not the side character. Goodbye, Jalen. Elena. I read it twice. Then I waited for something. Sadness. Vindication. Regret. But what I felt was peace. It was the most honest thing I'd received from her in over a year. And I didn't need to reply. I folded the memory into my thoughts, closed the email, and walked home in the soft rain. No rush. No looking back. At home, I dried off, pulled out the journal Nora had given me, and slipped a printed copy of the letter into the back pocket. Then I turned to a fresh page and wrote. I funded the party. They wrote the script. I walked out. Now they're the punchline. I looked out at the gray sky and smiled. Not because I won, but because I ended it on my terms. That evening, Nora came by. She brought fresh bread, local cheese, and a bottle of wine. We sat on the floor, laughing at nothing, a movie playing faintly in the background. We barely watched it. She told me a gallery in Spain had invited her to show her work. I told her I might travel again, maybe Italy, maybe Morocco. No pressure. No need to impress. Just two people seeing each other clearly. After dinner, we curled up on the balcony, sharing one blanket. Her head rested on my shoulder. I got a letter today, I said softly. She didn't ask from who. She didn't need to. Instead, she asked, do you feel lighter? I thought about it. The betrayal. The silence. The rebuild. All of it. Yes, I said. I do. She nodded, squeezed my hand, and said, good. That means it's really over. And she was right. Not because of the letter, but because I no longer needed one. I wasn't the groom who never made it to his wedding. I wasn't the silent man mocked in secret group chats. I wasn't the wallet, or the background, or the stand-in. I was Jalen Brooks, the man who chose himself, the man who didn't just survive the fire. He walked through it and found the sunrise on the other side. And wherever this story goes next, it starts with one truth. I'm not the man they tried to erase. I'm the one they'll never forget.